Hello and welcome to Real Estate Divas. Today with my fabulous co-host Jay Lee Thompson of Texel Real Estate, we have the amazing Casey Dehle of Atlas Transaction Coordinators. And if you don't know what this can do for your business, you really need to talk to her. And why don't you start it out, Casey? Give us an introduction.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's going on back there.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've known you guys for a little while now.
A few
hot
years,
minute.
a hot minute.
But this company is only in the last year. So yes, I started Atlas Transaction Coordinator Services about a year ago now. Can't believe it's been a full year.
Did you start in 2020, like the beginning?
Pretty much. I kind of started it at the end of 2019, but didn't really start marketing or sponsoring or doing anything until January. So,
well, one would say that that was about the worst possible time to start a small business.
It was the best possible time because it's 100% virtual. I already had stuff in place and was transitioning away from the, my actual investment company where I did assignments and fix and flips and things like that. So I actually had gotten rid of all our inventory, had nothing, and then everything switched and shut down. And I was like, well, sweet.
I'm already here.
I'm
already in this space.
And so it worked really well because at the time, a lot of investors were figuring out how to transition to virtual. So I was able to assist them. And also all the title companies, because we all know real estate is a little bit archaic, kind of like insurance industries, things like that. It really forced them to start doing things like setting up remote options for closing, online notarization started getting passed through state laws, things like that. So it was awesome to be able to be at the forefront and help people see what was possible despite not being able to go on appointments, and also give them insight into markets, because I'm in 30 plus states at this point.
Wow.
Closing
That's
deals.
awesome.
So we could see which markets were moving, halting based on local laws. Like in Pennsylvania, they couldn't do anything, or Virginia.
Wow.
But Texas was open, Florida was open. So we saw investors starting to move their markets. So we were here for it. I mean, we were just a really random resource and it just kind of exploded. So it worked.
So in a nutshell, for everybody who doesn't know what a transaction coordinator does for their real estate business, what do they do?
We're your favorite person you don't know you need.
Right?
So, really transaction coordinator, quite simply, is somebody who handles executed contract to close. And if you talk to, realtors use transaction coordinators.
All the time.
And so, if you talk to most transaction coordinators, they only know realtor land. So when I was working in my company, we all know out there, if you're in real estate, the most time-consuming thing is once you have that contract, managing sellers, conditions of move-outs, lease-backs, buyers that pull out, title issues, all of that stuff. We handle all of that. So you can literally hand us the contract and go back and hunt for your next deal. So we found investors, and I was one of them, had issues with you market and then you get all these deals under contract and then you have to stop marketing and you have to deal with all of your contracts.
Yep.
And then your deal pipeline is dead. I mean, that's like the constant
It's up and down. And you know
down.
what? I think a lot of us see that, especially if we're, what's the number one rule? I'm like, stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
Yep.
Do what you're good at. And if you are needed to find those deals, you can't ever stop. And if you're...
that marketing and that pipeline always have, well, especially when you're dealing with commissions or you're dealing with, the profits that you make off of that one deal. If you stopped everything for that one deal, then you're just starting all over again.
Like even reviewing HUDs takes time. Like how many mistakes? And it's interesting because when I was looking for a coordinator, I couldn't find anybody that knew investor land. I couldn't find anyone that knew how to stop foreclosures or how to get authorizations to get payoffs. And then the second thing was, well, my title company does all that. And I said, maybe and mostly, but if you're newer and you don't have that relationship with them, it's not really their job. They go out of their way to do so, but it's not really their job. And second, the time it takes the title company to do it, they think is normal, but it's not.
Yep.
So they're relying on their timelines thinking that's normal, and we accelerate everything. So we can get deals done faster, and we can clear really complicated issues because we positioned ourselves as knowing the intricacies of these most common issues that sellers have, which is where investors make their money. So it's like little things like that we kind of took over, and it's the last position that people want to hire because money, you got to pay people, and you also have to train them. And most investors who are getting into this don't really know that process very well.
Well, they don't know what they don't know. So,
Yeah,
you know,
like
I mean, you don't know how to do that. And now you're learning it for the first time, so, or the second time, because not every deal's different. I mean, that's
my
one of the
gosh.
things that we've learned. You know, if you haven't learned anything in real estate, every deal's different.
We have closed over 600 deals in 2020 alone. And not a single one was the same.
Yeah.
Like, not a single one was the same.
So you bring up price, and that's an important issue. I mean, if you're going to want to incorporate this into your business, you've got to make sure that you're also prepared for the costs and that you have maybe included that in your budget.
Sure. And what's nice about using a third party, because the age-old thing is, do I want them on my team? What is the role of this person? And a lot of companies try to combine admin positions with transaction coordinators, where they also having them running the properties, which I think is ridiculous, because the whole point of a TC is that they're there to answer the emails when they come in, be on the phones, sit on the IRS for 3 hours on the phone. Trust me, you have to sometimes. Things like that. And so they're really not capitalizing that whole position, and they're hiring the wrong person for it. And they're not really drivers or pushing those deals to close. Like, I will yell at attorneys all day long. Like, you know, I mean,
You're like, it's my job.
half the
and I
time
enjoy
you just
it.
got to yell at attorneys because so-and-so is not talking to so-and-so. And they're like, oh, I'll give you an update. And you sit on your hands and wait, right? I mean, you're just losing time on that sort of thing. So the cost is great when it's just taken out of the HUD per deal,
Right.
just like anything else. You have no insurance, no employees to manage, none of that stuff. So it's a good option if you're growing, at least.
Okay, so I'm assuming that the basic cost for just transactioning, in nothing crazy, right? Just the regular A to B,
Yeah.
right? What does that run about? Is it a percentage of the sale amount?
I wish. I mean, I wish it was all like based on a percentage of how difficult the deal was.
Yeah.
It's going to range by state and what people do. I would say your most common lowest price point is around $350 a transaction, and it goes up from there.
And that's not bad.
It's not bad.
That's
That's
a
almost,
freaking deal.
That's almost what you would pay on a title fee just
Yeah.
alone in closing. So.
Yeah.
Well, and so here's my next question. Do you step in and maybe clear title issues
Oh, 100%.
when your title company is not willing to?
100%.
So, and I ran into that just a few months back. Jay Lee and I've talked about it at length, where I was literally thrown to the wolves by two different title companies, and then the title company that closed it had closed it originally like a year before, threw me to the wolves, and was like, you know what, not our problem. And
It happens a lot.
yes,
Yeah.
And they get really busy, and they just don't prioritize it because, for whatever reason.
well, they're not making any more money off of it.
Yeah.
So we can close this file over here, which is going to take us, all week, or we can close 10 in its place. Well, that one's going to get left behind.
Yeah, and people don't realize that. So they're always relying on title. And yeah, if you're a big investor and you're a heavy hitter and you've got the rapport or whatever, you're probably going to have a good title. But what's great is we do such high volume and we help title companies so much that when they see our name come in, they're like, oh, they'll handle most of this. So we'll
won't
go
have to,
ahead
yeah.
and handle it. So you're right. It is one of those things where I've had situations where I've had people call me and say, I have been trying to close this for 6 months. I can't figure out what's next. I'll take a look at it and say, well, Texas Property Code says you only have to sign an affidavit, because it's a homestead or whatever the reason being. But the title company won't do it because it's their company policy not to touch that versus Texas Property Code. So a lot of times, a lot of the people working in title go by office policy and not necessarily legal code too.
Well, because that depends on whatever that broker is willing to take on,
Yeah.
and if they do mostly, just your typical retail transactions, then they don't want to deal with any of this other, that's why we have some of our favorite title companies or investor-friendly title companies that are willing to do.
There is
That are willing to go that
there's
extra
a
mile,
huge
but
difference.
what you'll find is, especially if you're doing on the retail side, because your buyer is going to pick the title company that they're comfortable with. So you don't know them, they don't know you. They're not expecting future business from you. And so, yeah, having a transaction coordinator, I could see as, especially after what I went through a few months ago,
Yeah.
I could see as being very, very important
And-
anytime you sell something.
Yeah, and so what's interesting too is we actually have such a great reputation with our title companies at this point that when a buyer does try to push for their own title company, my clients will call me and say, Casey, can you go have a conversation with them? And so I will pick up the phone
and go,
and give them credibility. And almost 95% of the time we get them to switch. So it works.
Yep.
And it's just an added, because we do have that credibility in volume that some of the newer investors might not have. So it actually really works.
So whenever you were trying to decide, whenever you were picking your lane, because we were talking about this before the show, is not everybody has to go out and do the same thing, like wholesaling. You don't have to be, that's not the only niche in real estate.
There's other ways to freedom.
There's other, you don't have to be a fix and flipper. There are other avenues to make money in real estate.
Yeah.
So it was your difficulty in transactions doing your own fix and flips and all the acquisitions that y'all were dealing with and the leads y'all were going through and the closings you were having that made you decide that this is lacking.
Well, yeah, I think what makes our company unique is that we are built by investors for investors. Any other TC company out there, they're independent. They maybe can handle a max of maybe 25 closings a month if they're really good, 25 to 30 roughly. And I knew that wouldn't really fly if you wanted to scale. Or then you started doing the math. Well, how many people would you have to hire? And then the more people that are involved, the more complicated it gets. So I started saying, well, how can I make it the most efficient without having, how do I scale just this tiny little piece of it? And I just started documenting stuff, and my volume got so big that people just started asking, how are you doing that? I was like, is this not normal? I didn't know, because I was just trying to make myself efficient. But I've sat in every seat of most of my clients' companies. I've sat in acquisitions, I've dispoed, I've run the company, I've done all the grunt work, the TCing, and so I realized that, I couldn't find anybody. I'm getting notes on the back. Sorry. I'm not getting distracted. So anyway,
Is your name Jay?
Is your name
all of a
Jay?
sudden?
It's not even me. Sorry. We're having...
Well, I'm not even moving.
Sorry.
Okay.
Well, now that I'm
Are we
here,
going to be able to edit that part out later?
I pulled out my calculator. Did 600 times the minimum. Hey, girl, hey.
Hey.
I mean, it's not my numbers, but it's good for a woman.
Yeah, well,
Wow. Yeah, he'll get punched later for that
I'm
one.
taking mental notes on that.
Yeah. We're filing that away.
Well, on a side note on that, not that people don't realize too that there are obviously operating costs to this, but you're right. Going back to your question about finding your niches in real estate, I think people get really caught up in feeling that they have to build the whole business. The most successful ones you see out there, think about Andy and Evo and Steve Trang and all of those over in Phoenix. They all have built services that service you guys in real estate. And then that has given them the capital to invest more, right? So, and they do really well because no one's taking the time to develop the pieces of the business that make it more efficient. So I just saw the TC side as one of the most neglected pieces of the process, and people didn't really have the capacity, and so I just ran with it. And a lot of people told me it wouldn't work because they said, oh, well, just hire an admin, or a title company will do it, which is great when COVID hit, because not that that's great that it hit, but it did.
Nobody's saying COVID is great.
Right.
Nobody's saying that.
But there were a lot of people that adapted and a lot of people that didn't.
Yes.
And for the people that adapted, they saw the opportunity there. It's no different in real estate. You have to find the niches that don't have efficiency and don't have strong people that have knowledge in it on how to cure it. There's investors out there that have done hundreds of deals that don't know how to clear a certain title.
Yep.
Well, and I think it's a very important part that you bring up, because we say this all the time: find what you're good at and stay in your lane. And stay in your lane. It is.
Because we have all this information at our fingertips. You can learn just about anything you want from YouTube, and so everybody does that. But you're always looking, in real estate in particular, I find investors are always looking for that next shiny object, like the thing that's getting the most buzz. What's the next buzzword? What's the next new fancy strategy? And then it's sidetracked. And you're so busy doing that you don't take the time to really look at what it is you're best at. What really can you excel at?
And your market, right? Because we're in the middle of a huge market shift. and it's going to. We don't really know what's going to happen. There's predictions out there. That's why I chose to work with investors. Realtors are one of the top ones that fall out.
Yep.
When there's a market shift and they kind of don't get the business, but investors, there's always investors that are, that are buying
they're
and
always
selling.
going to work, and that's their
Always.
business. So they
Well,
will
the last
continue.
bubble, those were the only people buying and selling. That's the whole reason why I ended up shifting and being more investor, conscious and getting into investing, that sort of thing, was because of the bubble. And there were 0 buyers qualified, because now they weren't qualifying anybody, and the houses were sitting forever.
Well, I always love, you meet somebody and they're like, oh, well, yeah, I'm a licensed realtor. And I'm like, yeah, so are like 90% of people out there. And
And the offices were cut to a third. Like they were cut down.
So brokers fired realtors?
No, they quit. They couldn't make any
quit.
money.
Yeah.
They didn't know how
Yeah.
to pivot. They weren't into investing in any way, shape, or form, and they couldn't survive.
And so the real estate agents just
Yeah. Yeah, they were
two-thirds
cut
of
to-
them dropped.
Yeah, 2/3, at least half, but 2/3 of them. And then
Are you talking about like in 2009?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
a high number. It was crazy.
it was
Were you working as a realtor?
I
back
was
then?
not a realtor at the time, but I did look up the stats on it because I was curious on who kind of performs in the market shifts, because it's research for my avatar too, right?
Right.
Like who I'm looking at, and I did see that stat and I was just blown away. It was
Yep.
crazy.
Well, I've never gone after it, never wanted to be a realtor. And again, because I hire realtors to do that job. But I love, what, transaction coordinators offer. So here's another question. Since you are cleaning up title issues, will you clean up title issues post-closing?
So, yeah, I mean, we don't run into it often because we
Release of
typically
liens.
deal with it. Yes.
What I find, especially in what I've discovered I'm now having an audit done of all files that I've had closed over the last 3 years.
Wow.
That's got to be fun.
It's really fun when you find out that the title company that you have a title policy with didn't pay back taxes, back liens,
Or file.
or file any release of liens, or go through any of it. So yeah, it's a pretty easy risk to take, especially with somebody buying a note, because the likelihood is the borrower is going to go refinance and any of that will get cleared. I'm probably not going to go, it's not going to sell and trade hands again. So where's the risk on having a policy for a lender? We're not going to find that. But what I found was, okay, it took me 3-4 months to sell a note that I took back and turned into a property. And so that's why I'm going, hey, what do you offer?
You kind of give me a good idea. Well, here's the thing. We naturally do that anyway, because let me tell you, not all title companies are equal. I'm keeping a roster, so if you ever want a recommendation, message me privately. What I can
We
tell
won't put you on the spot. I thought about
Let's
it.
just say that there are title companies that everyone loves because they're fast and they work with investors and they work around stuff.
and they will take any
And
file.
they'll take any file until the day comes when you go to resell that property or something wasn't done correctly. I've seen it more times than I can count.
and you want to write an $18,000 check to get it sold?
Yep. So
Before you're allowed to file a claim on your policy?
Yep.
there's a lot of risk in it. This is how, it's interesting. Someone told me, they said, like, our whole idea is to mitigate transactional risk. People are a little bit in the clouds when they're getting started out about that risk that happens because they don't have the knowledge of chain of title, knowledge that a lot of realtors have because we get trained in it. But it's like chain of title and what are the different title stat fee simple versus, estates with survivorships. All that stuff matters in how you clear it. And then there's state law on top of that. And then it can get crazy. So we have had situations where things have closed or we get brought a new contract on a property that someone's closing and we find out it wasn't done properly. I've seen people who go to resell a property 5 years later and all of a sudden there's 2 huge IRS liens on it and everyone's like, title says we can't sell this property. It's done. And I take a look at it, I read the title commitment, I'm like, well, A, it's not our seller. It's a completely different entity. And B, it was literally filed 1 year after he took possession of the property. So I'll do your job and I'll go ahead and call the other title company and file an insurance claim. And sure enough, we got it released. No
Wow.
problem.
Yeah.
But it's like that was the title company telling me there was nothing they could do. So little things like that, and that was literally 5 years later. So these mistakes happen. He did have title insurance.
I
it
was
worked.
working on something a year and a half ago and found out that I was working for a bank liquidating some of their foreclosures. Oh yeah, they foreclosed on the wrong property.
Oh yeah. I see. I had my own property
I'm like-
foreclosed on.
And then
Oh
they
my
were mad at
gosh.
me
Yeah,
because
yeah.
then they were mad at me because I'm like, I can't sell this.
Yeah.
You don't have the right to sell this.
It happens. It just happens. And so I think that you can take your risk not doing it, but it is what we are here for. And I've had people who have gotten out of real estate that said they would get back in it if they knew we existed for investors. So we're looking to expand into the commercial side, into post-closing issues and auditing, and adding services once we get that foundation down, because we're really creating processes and very detailed checklists for current clients on single-family residential. And once we nail it, we know how to replicate that and just kind of move forward with more complicated issues. So we are looking to
Expand
Expand into the post problems. Yeah.
Sure.
And then you can just hire us. I mean, we have people hire us just to help them get through a refinance. I mean, we'll just help manage the paperwork for it. I've had people come to me saying, I don't know how we're gonna do this transaction, like a sub 3 transaction. I've seen them do some weird stuff, but we have such creativity in real estate
Yep.
that they'll come to me and be like, I don't know how we're gonna figure this out, but we're gonna figure this out. So we're sitting there literally with a pad and paper saying, documenting what's needed, what state are we in, does an attorney need to be involved, and we're kind of mapping types of transactions I've never seen anybody do.
Wow.
So
It's fun.
going back
Well,
to
it keeps it interesting. I mean, at least that.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
going back to 2020, I mean, you've been in business now 1 year, and yes, you pivoted well and you adjusted to what was going on. You saw the writing on the wall. But what would you say were your strong suits and stuff that were the aha moments to really be able to do 50 deals in a month?
Yeah, so that's a hard question because I can't express documentation enough. Like, you can handle a lot in your head, and I don't fit the profile of a transaction coordinator. Let me just be straight with that. I'm more of that visionary type, but I'm what they call a dynamo in disc profiles, in that I can adapt and hop really easily and very informally. So I don't get really bogged down by uncertainty or changes. I just kind of see it as a problem. So what worked for me was when I knew when I reached a cap in my own brain, and I knew that I couldn't move forward with it. So documenting it.
So when you say documenting, are you saying writing out your processes?
Yes, process mapping. You should see pieces of paper I have for that. I want to save them because it's so chaotic and nuts.
But you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, I would just take pieces of paper and create these matrices and say, okay, what is the life of what does it look like, a transaction? And then what if it's owner finance? What if it's an agent? Where are the variants? And I would just process map these out crazy, like a crazy person. I had these boxes everywhere. You would think I was a mad scientist. I don't even know. But that's what I did. And then I just took those variances out and started documenting what made them different. And I just honestly started putting them in lists. That's all I did.
So, since there's not a big, huge aha moment, what was your biggest, because I know there was some struggle there of what's the hurdles of, well, you kind of hit this moment, like you said, I kind of hit this ceiling and I've made those goals. Well, now what's next to because I find that a lot of people in their businesses, they hit those plateaus and then it's hard to break through those and figure out, all right, what can we do to start scaling?
You have to do the classic SWOT analysis. You got to find your own bottlenecks. You got to ask yourself, is it manpower? Is it process related? Is it concept related? What is it? And I've shifted. I used to take on anyone. Mm-hmm. Now I'm well, you can't really scale just take it on anyone because there's no consistency. So I learned how to really focus on one thing and not do the shiny object and say, so we stopped taking realtors.
Yep.
We actually refused to take realtors. which is uncommon, but there's enough TCs out there for you guys.
Yeah.
No, we'll be adding it back in. But we stopped taking realtors. Then we switched to you have to apply to work with us so that we could figure out how to incorporate them into our system. So something that shifted for me was I was going out there saying, well, you tell me how you work and let me know what you need. Where I'm saying, no, you're coming to me because you have a problem. I'm going to tell you what you need and how it should be done.
Yep.
And that shifted everything.
Nice.
Then it got us to a place where we were more on a consultant level and we had more control. So the more control we had, the more successful it was. And now when we help identify, we'll say, hey, we're really lagging on your lenders. Like, we need to figure out a better process here, and we'll go to them and say, so it almost helps them in their business in lots of ways, not just on the TC aspect. And that helped us streamline and scale so I was able to double my workload doing that when I took back control. And then I capped myself out, and then I said, okay, now I need to bring other people on because this is not sustainable.
I can only do so much. There's only 24 hours in a day.
I think I got up to about 150 to 200 actives when I was like, I'm out. Like,
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm exhausted. And then
Yeah.
I started hiring assistants from there.
So, and I mean, I looked at that, and kudos to you for hiring assistants in 2020
It
because
was hard.
I was planning on hiring 2 people, and then COVID hit.
Yep.
And I was planning on doing it in May because I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this in May. I'm going to find like a graduate up at University of North Texas. That's where I'm going with this. And COVID hit, and I'm like, oh, hell no. Right? And I'm like, I can keep doing this. And it nearly killed me come like all summer and even through the holidays. I'm like, I can't keep at this pace.
Yep.
I am not going to lie. There's nothing glamorous. I've worked 12 to 15-hour days for a year straight, and it wasn't until September when I hired my first transaction coordinator to start taking the workload in the summer of 2020. And that's when I started to get a little taste of that freedom. And then I had the
You're like, I can
courage.
breathe.
I can breathe again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a hard decision, but it was also the hardest thing in people, I think, scaling their business or even stabilizing their business to where they feel like they're not dying inside, is trusting somebody to do it. It's so tough, but you can't trust someone or pass it until you write it down. I mean, that's just the
that's part of
issue.
it. Yeah, that's
You
part
can't
of it
pass
because you've got to train that person so that you can trust them. And the best way to train them is if everything's up in your head, you've got nothing to give them for them to learn by other than just watch me do my job and then nobody's helping
And
you
that's
do
what I
it.
did.
Yeah, yeah.
I literally Zoomed with her and just let her watch, and I would talk with her, and she told me today, or a couple days ago, because it's been a while now, she said, I miss those days because you would just like rattle info, but I also hired somebody who I knew could go in the fire like that. So that's just a side note if you are expanding. Some people look at certain profiles, but they aren't considering where they are in their business. So if you're newer and starting out and you need to you need a personality that can adapt, be thrown in, help you organize, versus now I would hire another transaction coordinator that's way more detail oriented and structured because I can give it to them.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So just
Because
as a
you
side note.
have those processes.
Exactly.
You have your thoughts down too. I mean, that's my biggest thing.
When you're like
deciding
this,
right
yeah.
and how many people to hire for different positions. That's a big thing for me is what am I not capable of? Okay, nobody can come be on this show.
Right? So I gotta do that.
I can't send
I
somebody
can't send
to do
somebody
that.
to do that.
All
Yeah.
right, that's fine. But basically everything else that
there's
I'm doing should be able
There's
to
a great chart that's from Gary Harper that he's put out there before. He's a business coach. For any of you guys who don't know who he is, he has a grid, and you write out everything I love and I'm good at, and you first you a whole list of everything you do, everything in your daily, everything you love and you're good at goes into one box. Everything you hate
or is beneath you.
and you are bad at, and then
Or
there's,
procrastinate.
yeah, so
Procrastinate, that means you don't like it, people.
exactly. So when you see your boxes, they teach you keep this, delegate the rest.
Yeah.
And that's where you can start. And then you could say, okay, well, could an assistant do this? Like, what kind of knowledge do you need to do this? And you start to break it down. We talk about delegating all the time. No one knows how to start because you're so in your own head about it that you feel fearful I felt fearful. I'm like, people are going to come work for me and be like, you are nuts. I don't know how you do this. And they did, but it was okay because they're still here. But I did say, can I just like throw it up on this knowledge on you, take note, soak it in. I always ask how they learn. Yeah. How do you learn? Do you want me to talk at you? Do you want to like, what do you need?
What do you want?
And that was helpful. And they were transparent with me and we just got it done. So
I think that's fantastic. I think that's fantastic advice.
Yeah.
You know, and also realizing, okay, well, how much business do you have coming in? If you are working 12 to 15 hours a day and making a crap making a crap load of money,
get help.
if your pipeline never had a break in marketing, you know, if that's something that falls off, you probably need an assistant for that. Your social media can be handled. Now, there's a lot of communication with your social media person to make sure they don't put weird stuff up there for you. But
I haven't given that off yet. I don't even do it for starters. So
Was that a dig?
No, it's not a dig. It's not a dig. I love Amanda. I'm looking forward to spending more time with Amanda.
I don't know who
Amanda's the Harper Belmont Studios social media person.
Oh.
If you notice, I have public profiles.
Terrible. I am terrible at social media.
I just swallow it. I see it. I'm like, that looks good.
Well, because when it's not you, it's not you. Like I had my assistant doing it for a while, and every once in a while I'm like, oh,
what the fuck?
No. Well, you know, but you know, I mean, it's something that, but it is something that you have to work out. You know, it's just like any other position. It's something that, like, hey, these are my parameters. This is what I'd really like it to look like. You know.
And one thing you really have to work out is what kind of branding are you doing? Are you the brand? Do you not want to be the brand? Because I became the brand only because people knew me personally. So it was easy for them to reach out and say, will you do this? And so in order for me to get out of my business, I have to position my team as just as good of an expert as me. Not that I'm like amazing, I'm always learning, but I have more knowledge than they do. So it's one of those things where I've seen companies struggle, and this was my number one question last quarter, was how do you transition out when people are still only coming to you because they want to talk to you and you have the knowledge and you want to deal with it. So you have to go back in and say, okay, am I training my team? Or, you know, do they know as much as I know? How do I get to a point where they know, oh, I can talk to Kayla. Oh, she's got this handled, rather than passing them on and say, oh, I have to ask Casey. You know, I don't want a team that has to ask Casey. I don't want that. I want them to be like their own experts and their own people. And so when people come to my company, they know they're getting that level of service. So you kind of have to ask yourself when you're stepping out and when you're delegating things, what do you have to be involved in? So often, as you guys know, if you're the owner of your company or your brokerage, you're going to be the one that sits in that sales seat still. Always. You created it.
Yep.
So people ask all the time, well, once I get out, what do I do? You sell your company and then you pass them on to your team to load them up or get them started or whatever they want to do.
Yep.
Anyway,
I think it's good. And that's something, I think all of us struggle with because we are the face. You know, I'm the face of Capricorn.
Yeah.
Jay is the face of Texel.
Yep. Is that what you do? I'm just kidding.
Okay, we're going to give a quick shout out to Gary Harper for sharperprocess.com.
So he is my lifeline. Him and his entire team. This is something he did. Gary is the face of his company, but they're expanding. And I don't know if people know how many businesses he owns, but there's a lot of them. And so that's something that they taught me how to do, was position everybody as an expert, as a piece of the company. So when they reach out to you, you know, you feel like you're talking to Gary. Like, you know, he's an extension of them. And that worked really well for them. So I'm just taking that advice. So.
Well, you bragged on him. You bragged on him quite a bit.
On him.
I do. Yeah. I wouldn't be standing without those mentors. I wouldn't be here today.
And how long ago did you start working with him?
I actually started working with them in my investment company. It'll be 2 years ago in March. I feel like maybe it's been longer than that, but it's only been 2 years. And then I switched to this company, and they were like, they often say, don't switch. You know, like, what are you doing? But in this scenario, they saw my vision and they helped me get there. I wouldn't have seen the vision had they not tested me in those like personality profiles. And they were like, you need your own company. Like, because I was in partnership in my other one, so
Yeah.
but I wasn't really running it fully. So they're like, you need your own company to like play with and get it out. And I did it. So it was their encouragement actually that kind of got me there. So I know I'm like a fangirl. I highly recommend their businesses. They also helped me hire a COO this last quarter.
Very nice.
Wow.
That was worth
Now,
every penny.
Ryan, didn't you go to one of Gary Harper's events? Wasn't
Maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The team, Tommy, and myself, and the Propeller leadership, we went to Chicago,
Oh yeah, that's right.
and we did the full 4 days. It was great.
Awesome.
Yeah, boot camp is what that was. Business
Yeah.
boot camp. They teach
Business
you all that
boot camp.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like how to process
Well-
map, how to get it down, all that stuff.
From my point of view, it was like, oh, so I have been right.
Yeah. You came back validated.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then quickly,
Well,
So the point is that it
point
takes a team.
is, yeah.
And we all have different roles and personalities, and never feel bad about not being able to do everything. I personally couldn't really like stomach building a wholesale company. It just wasn't really in my desire to do so.
Yep.
Ironically, because it's so transactional, which is what I do for a living now, but
Yeah.
I'm not doing the daily transactions as much anymore. I'm kind of phasing out as we build it. So
Yeah.
I'm starting to get back to where I should be in the company. And I promise you my TCs are going to do better than I did. But anyway, I think it's one of those things where this is just an avenue to fill a niche in the industry that I found. And I'm still investing. I'm still going to go and do other things.
Well, yeah,
you don't have
you
to
don't
do
have
it.
to, and that's kind of the mistake. When I say don't get distracted by shiny objects, that doesn't mean you can't have multiple streams of income. But like when you're building something, like that was your all everything in
my
2020.
all in. Yeah,
you
I
know,
didn't
I
do
mean,
anything.
build that up and give it everything you've got so that it has that groundwork, it has that foundation to continue to grow, and is only going to allow you to invest more or do more of, you know, get into streams of revenue that maybe you wouldn't have had the time for before. But
Yeah.
but you did the work. You did the work for an entire freaking year.
And I'm still doing the work.
And still doing the work.
Tired.
Yeah. No, I would see your posts sometimes, and you're like, "Okay, it's 11:30, and I'm finally pouring myself a glass of wine."
It might have started earlier than that,
Yeah.
but no, it's been a grind, and it's not for the faint of heart. But it was interesting because my mentors would be like, I've actually had several people ask to buy me out.
Really?
Oh yeah, like
Wow.
I've had a few, or partner, or do some kind of buyout. And at the beginning, when I was working like that, I was like, I'll
Maybe.
listen to you,
Yeah.
you know, because I was so exhausted, and it was people who I had worked with that knew me really well that said, "You willing to work for at least 3 to 5 years, like to grind?" And I said, "Yeah, I actually think I am." And that's when they and I passed them all up, and then it kind of shifted for me mentally, and I got a handle on it. And I am so glad I didn't let my fear give
Stop
it
you.
away
Yeah.
and stop it. So yeah, several. And I'm like, I'm not even a company yet. Like I am the company, and I don't want to be the company. So I have to get to a place, you know, where it's not that way. And I feel like I see the sun, but then something else happens. So we'll
I feel
see.
like that's a song.
You're still not at the point where you could have a board of directors that could vote you out, and you
Right.
could leave, and it would still run just as before.
Well, that's what it is. I think Eddie Wilson calls that level of succession, right? So in the path of building your business, right? You've got your concepts, you got your building, you got growth. But what happens on the growth side is everybody cycles back to the beginning again, and it's that they get stuck in that little like spiral. And no one teaches you how to reach that succession stage. Like, are you preparing your company to just be like to be true owner, not even operator,
Right.
but owner?
Yep.
To where you can get voted out. You want
No,
to
and I mean, and really when, you know, and especially somebody who's, you know, started several companies, right, and runs several companies now, with people, you know, that I hire and that work for me, I find it amazing still. If I went away, if I got hit by a bus, those are gone.
Yep.
There's no
It's
more
a scary
company.
thought, isn't it?
Yes.
Everything you've built and done, And I don't have kids or anything to like take over. So it is like I started thinking about that.
I got kids and they don't want to take over.
Well, that's so sad.
They're both like, I don't want to do real estate. It's boring. I was like, y'all both are getting an education, period. And y'all are going to know that you want to be at least investing in real estate. So
That's funny.
Yeah,
but
but
that
neither one
happens
of
all
us.
the time.
I trained my
Yep.
17-year-old this past week.
Oh, yeah?
He's starting.
Good.
He's
Awesome.
He's cold calling.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
great.
It is. It's great. I
I'm-
mean, then we did the first thing, and he did the research. He was done first night after I trained him.
Nice.
I'm just bribing my nieces and nephews to see who's going to take over because I don't know what to do. I do want to build it though. I do see a vision because if you think about it, we are actually one of those unique concepts where we get things before title even gets them.
I didn't even know that your service existed. I understand Jay Lee knew because realtors use them.
Yep.
But I never knew as an investor
I
that was
haven't
there.
met a single investor that does know that they exist.
Right.
And so that's why it's worked. But what's interesting is I've talked to TCs that work with realtors and they're like, God bless you. I would never work with investors. Or they don't know about them.
Right.
So it
Probably
is
more often than
different.
not, it's kind of like the realtors that don't know anything about
Right.
investing. And they're like, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with that.
Right.
You know?
So there is opportunity to kind of train and show other transaction coordinators this world because it's consistent.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that one
opportunity.
doesn't go anywhere. Like you just said, we mentioned earlier in the show that if things get, turn and there's a downward turn in the market, well then, I mean, the investors are the ones sticking around. So it's kind of built in constant revenue stream.
and and realtors that work with investors too.
Yeah,
All the way
exactly.
around. For sure.
Exactly. Well, if you guys have any questions whatsoever for Casey, just, drop them. Let us know. She's happy to answer. She'll get on here
Yeah.
and answer, or
And
if you want to get in
it's
contact
a wealth
with
of
her.
knowledge, and I think a
It's-
super important topic if you want to not be like a dude with a truck,
Driving for dollars.
driving for dollars or
Yeah.
rehabbing a house at a time, and you want to actually take your business to a level where you're a company, and I
Yep.
think that's where everybody envisions themselves going, but how do you get there?
It's the hardest part for sure. But also if you have questions just about like transactions or title or anything, I get a lot of phone calls about that as well. So I'm happy to share if you ever run into like a roadblock or don't know how we solve something. I probably know someone who has if we haven't, but at that kind of volume, I feel like we've seen a few things.
Yeah, and please go. Please go
600 transactions and none of them were the same. She's seen a few things.
And please go to our YouTube channel and make sure, subscribe, follow. You see something you love, write us a little comment. Just say hello.
And then if there's something you want to know about, because that's another thing. We're always looking for new topics for each show.
Yeah.
You know? Yes, I would love to get that.
Yeah.
People are like, hey, can you do this? Yeah, DM us on that.
There's someone. There's someone that knows something. That's
Well,
for sure.
Casey, thanks for showing
Thanks for
up
having
today.
me, for
This has been
sure.
so awesome.
I know.
Way to start off the new year. All the ladies on board. So,
In all black.
you guys, happy 2021. And this is Real Estate Divas. I'm Jay Lee Thompson with Texel Real Estate.
Casey Dehle with Atlas Transaction Coordinator Services.
And Kristen Gerst with Capricorn Mortgage Investments. Send me your owner finance notes if you're looking to sell one.
Thanks for joining us, you guys.
Thanks.
Bye.